Hello, everyone, and welcome to Week 8 of the Gang Plays Casual, and this is our final week for Season 1 of the League of Light. I am joined by Stephen Riley. Stephen, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And, of course, I'm joined by Get in the Van himself, Max. How are you, sir?
I'm well.
Excellent, excellent. So this is it. League of Light is over for Season 1. Division 2, I believe Division 1 is still going on, but we have wrapped up Division 2. And our final standings, it looks like, Steven, you were able to take 5th place. You were right outside the top 4. And Brad was right below you in 6th. And then Max was in 9th. And I believe all 3 of you were 3-1? Or Max, did you go 2-2?
Me and Brad went 2-2, and
Okay.
Steven went 3-1.
And then Steven went 3-1. Gotcha. So let's just wrap it up right away, and I'll ask you outright, boys, were you satisfied with how you did in the top cut?
I was dissatisfied that I didn't think I was going to play the mirror match, which is why I ended up 3-1, I feel like. So, but other than that, it was fine. I
Max?
can't complain.
No, I'm not satisfied because I started off strong and just like fell off. Like, I mean, I'll say it right now. My hate for fire just grew in this league. Like, grew. For those of you that are listening, I faced fire in all 4 of my rounds, and
Did you really? Wow.
Yes, yeah.
In some capacity,
I faced fire, lightning, fire, earth, fire, lightning, mono fire.
Oh, man.
And Amaterasu was in every single deck, and I
Yeah,
hate
you're
that
right.
card. I hate that card. Absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
But I mean, my League of Light top cut was like a roller coaster. You know, it just was going up and then it just went off the rails.
You realized once you got to the top, they haven't finished this thing, and you just go.
Yeah, it was like a roller coaster tycoon roller coaster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One that somebody was messing with while you were riding it.
It's like Alba is supposed to be working on it, but she never showed up.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned Alba. Let's bring up decks. And so here's what we'll say. So the premise of this is that you have to keep the same general type of deck. So Steven, you still pretty much have to play fire. Max, you have to play lightning. So you can't just completely change to a different deck. But now that you've gone through it, based on the decks you ran, is there anything you would have changed? Maybe cards you would have teched in, cards you definitely would have taken out? Max, we'll start with you.
So yes. I would change a lot in this deck. It mainly starting with my backup line.
Yeah.
I think what had happened was I was playing an older. I got the list up, and this was an older variant of the list, and I just kind of like threw some stuff together. And for sure, I don't understand why I didn't have Lulu in the deck, considering it was a mono lightning. I would probably cut. I would definitely cut Lid. I would cut probably 1 Sakura and 1 Zemus, and then I would play 3 drop backups, and then I would probably remove the X Death or cut it to 1 and then play 1 Sid Previa.
Yeah.
And then
were you happy with the Odin package, or would you?
Oh yes, I thought the Odin package was great. I would keep the Odin package. It's versatile. If Octagon loved me, it would come in clutch in the EX burst.
Yeah.
But the summons were great, and I would keep the Ramu in. It was mainly for the Sophie matchup, which I didn't face at all.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
It always sucks when you're like prepping for something, then you never even go against it.
Well, it's not like there wasn't Sophie in the League of Light,
right?
Like there was. It's just I didn't face any of it.
I mean, not to cut you off, Max, but it kind of with that. I mean, that's kind of goes into deck building in general, where you kind of like, why am I going to play this card? It might be good in one matchup, or is this going to take up a slot for a card that's going to be good in a larger variety of matchups? So, I mean, like, if the field is so heavily favored in Sophie, which, to be fair, I thought it was going to be 2. At least I think there was only like 2 Sophie decks that I think were in there. At least 2 that I know of.
Maybe, yeah.
And it just was not. Sophie wasn't like a super heavy thing. And there are other 2-drop targets and stuff that you use, but they weren't like like ones that you would see regularly in a lot of matchups. So I know like you probably used it like on Alba and some other things, but beyond that there was like, or not Alba. Did I say Alba? Alba's the two
Yeah.
cost.
Alba's 2 cost.
But there wasn't too many 2-cost cards outside of that, and like people weren't playing knights, so you really didn't have like a Beatrix to hit with it or anything like that. But I mean, just like I said, it just kind of just you threw the deck together real quick, like you were saying. So you kind of didn't consider a lot of that stuff. And when I threw my stuff together, I did the same thing. I have a lot of the card choices and stuff that were pretty similar.
And you guys just obviously had to just kind of guess at what you'd be playing against period when you submitted your deck. So
well, yeah, and you think like there were a lot of different decks, and then there was like similarities between it, and it's just how the cookie crumbles of who you play.
Yeah,
you know, like I mean, I could have easily not played any of these people and not ran into fire.
Yeah.
And like some of these cards would be way better in the deck. Like to be fair, like there were cards that came in clutch in certain ones, like Fell Thanos. Like in my second match, I was playing the Fire Earth like March Ritz combo, and
I silly doggy.
Can you just go lay down? And I played Felthanos, and the only thing that he could play in the deck was
Did you name your dog Felthanos? Is that why you
He's
like I hear my name? What do you want?
Felthanos? What do you want?
Can you go lay down, Felthanos? Was Braska's, and you didn't draw it. So it won me the game. But then like when I faced Rainy, like she had the Odins, she had Ophelia, she had Rain, she had targets to get around it, and it's like Diana, I would cut. It was good thinking. But the fact that I never saw Alba in the first place made the card not very good.
How many Diana did you end up playing?
I played 2. I played 2 and 2. I would cut the Glauca. I play another Alba, and then I don't know what I would play for the Diana. I'd probably consider putting in a second Kadaj, and then probably another Estinian or something. And then
Aranea wouldn't be terrible either, because she can grab Glauca, Alba.
She's gonna get Alba, any of the 2-drops that you want to see.
But for general speaking, I did like how the deck performed. It's just that in the games that I drew, the games that I'd lost, I noticed how bad like certain things were. I was getting pretty bad luck in the games that for like my damages and stuff, and I was hitting stuff that, like, where are all my Odins at? Where are my Ramus? Where are these cards that EX burst? But I mean, it just happens. But the deck performed well. It performed really well in the matches I won, and I mean, you guys know I play aggro, and being able to just like sit there and then put out Behemoth K and then always have the Alua special in hand. Like, I mean, I really enjoyed the deck. I just would change some things about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you liked it. That's important. So Riley, moving to you, and honestly, if you hadn't had to face, of all the people in Top Cut, there's one other person playing Mono Fire, and of course that was your very first match.
Yeah, that was my first game.
Had you not played that, you very easily could have gone 4-0, because it seemed like you kind of just crushed everybody else you ran into. So go ahead and tell me about your deck. Anything you would change?
I should have played LeBro. At least a one of, because I felt like there's a lot of matchups where I felt like just the 1K power would have been a pretty big differential.
Both of you guys playing mono decks without anthems.
Yeah, I mean, mine played around the fact that I'm just going to blow stuff up anyways. So, keeping that in mind, I probably would have played a little more haste. Furion was actually a good card in the mono, or in the mirror match. that I probably could have slotted in, at least one of them. That if I would have saw it, I could have played it. But beyond that, I felt pretty good with a lot of the card choices. Nothing felt terrible. I know there was a couple games where I just like completely bricked, so I might adjust numbers for the backup lines a little bit more. But I didn't feel like anything didn't feel smoothly. Like didn't a lot of the time when I was playing on curve, it felt good.
Yeah.
And there was like a lot of things I had. So like between Zondi and Ace, sometimes I would just slam them down without having a target or anything, but it was just a 2-cost backup to curve out into like Geomancers and
Yeah.
other things that I could use. So nothing felt terrible. And then getting on 5 backups is like always kind of what you wanted to do in a mono fire deck anyway. So if I could smooth out the curve a little more where I could consistently get to that 5 backups better, I would probably do that. The forwards and stuff that I played, I felt were probably okay. Maybe I could have jammed in some Lonnie because Lonnie would basically help win the mirror match in a sense because then I can mill and I can use whatever else I end up ripping off the top of their deck, especially in the mirror match. But beyond that, I can't really think of anything. There might have been like some weird card choices because I know like Overcast, his mono fire deck played like bombs and stuff that like was similar to Nick Schnell's list and everything. I just wanted to go back to more traditional like Opus 10, 11 Ifrita sort of thing. So maybe playing something with just like mono fire good cards with none of the Ifritas and stuff like that might have been a better deck to go with. Just better field in general. It would have been better probably against the mirror match.
Yeah.
But no, I can't complain. I felt like the 3 games that I won handedly. Some of them were like due to mill and stuff like that, but I mean that's what the deck does, so can't really complain. But yeah, I think obviously I'm never gonna stop playing Fire, so
naturally
it's gonna happen.
Well, so are you both signed up for season 2?
Max, you're signed up, aren't you?
I have not signed up yet, but I probably will. I think I was holding off, but the fact that they're gonna abandon the pods makes me feel like
is that the final decision that they're cutting out pods and just going Swiss?
Swiss, because like I looked at the
I think he did a poll for it, and it looked like it was really heavily in favor of Swiss.
Yeah, like 19 people voted for 34 people voted for Swiss and 2 people voted for not Swiss.
So we're going to more. It's like a Crystal Cup over like 4 weeks essentially, or 5 weeks, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, and then each week we'll have a best of 3. So it'll be like a chess style tiebreakers, I guess.
Yeah, he'll stick with the Bushel stuff, and then. Well, I guess if it's I guess he could do that.
Yeah.
Stick with the.
So speaking of that Bushel stuff, because I personally never really understood what that does. As far as things you'd like to see improved, I'm sure Matt might watch this video, and so like for season 2, is there anything you guys could think of? I wish they would add this or take away this or anything that stood out to you, or were you satisfied with the way it was run?
I think specifically we did this to ourselves, but I really liked. I think after I was like, oh yeah, Swiss for top cut, and then like the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, I kind of like what Division 1's doing,
the bracket,
double
limb,
yeah, and it's like Stephen lost got 5th because of breakers, like that's like and obviously it happens, but like he would still be fighting right now if it was a double elim,
Yeah, that's
true.
And I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, you got to win your games and everything.
Yeah, I like the double elimination bracket too, though, because as a guy who watches a lot of Dota and MOBAs online, to me, it's very exciting because there is this tension of like, hey, if this team loses, they're out. Whereas Swiss, it's kind of like,
well, play your 4 games regardless. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I would be fine seeing that as well. Any thoughts, Stephen?
I'm a pretty easy guy to please when it comes to tournament running because I'm really not in favor of one or the other, so I'm kind of just like whatever. like Max says, basically you just have to win your games regardless of whatever
Yeah,
you're doing.
right.
So either way it goes, you just want to win out. And like if you bubble due to breakers and stuff, then that's just the nature of the system. But
Yeah.
honestly, for obviously this isn't his first online tournament that Rice has put together and his crew and everything, but kind of refined over and just like this is a new format that they were trying out. I think he did like an amazing job for kind of a first season sort of thing. Like just how organized it was and everything, how everybody was able to kind of play out their matches and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I thought that was great. I didn't have any problem scheduling anything, which is good. Everybody was really friendly with a lot of that stuff. That's kind of the reason I don't want to play competitive, because as soon as you get into competitive, and then you start to get a bunch of angry, salty players, and you just want to avoid that if you can. Because I'm just trying to play for fun, man.
Yeah,
Just trying to do the leisure stuff.
Well, that's what I heard from
like,
a lot of folks too. Sorry, Max, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Was that a lot of, at least in the casual league, maybe it was very different and competitive, but in the casual league, people, I never even heard anyone talking about prizes. No one was like, "Oh, they just wanted to play." Like they're just happy to play the game. So, go ahead, Max.
I think that, and that's like one of the reasons why I was like, I hadn't signed up, because I was like, do I really want to get into a pod with like a bunch of like really, really good players and just like and just really hate myself for the next 4 weeks while I'm like, yes, your Matisky's in my pod, and this, whoever else is in my pod, and I'm just like, that didn't sound fun to me. That's the whole reason I play casuals, also because like, like I can say this. For me, I can't say this for the rest of the crew because Steven probably, yes, so, but like I don't think I played like an oppressive meta deck or whatever, how you define that. And like I was just throwing around ideas that were fun and in theory could work, and I mean, like I did well. I mean, we all did well. We all won our pod. Like, it's just it's like I just didn't want to. I know that like competitive would be like there wasn't that fun aspect of me deck building, because I know that I'm going to be facing one of the top 3 decks of the format every single week.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much do I want to do that? But I mean, I think with the Swiss, I think I can come around on that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that, and it's the elephant in the room sort of thing. Really, the game is determined how much you're actually having fun by who's actually in your pod and who you're paired with.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, if you're against a bunch of people that are just like hardcore, you can be hardcore and still be enjoyable to play against.
Yeah.
But you just it kind of just depends on who you run into and stuff. And that was what was nice about the casual league, is it was all lighthearted. Everybody was kind of most people were still learning how to play, so they were happy to hear advice or changes or whatever it is and learn things. So everything was kind of really lighthearted. A lot of the times, like I always offered, it was a casual league, so I always offered for people, if they made mistakes, they could take that back. And a lot of the times, like, no, I made that mistake, I want to learn from it. And I thought, yeah, that's cool. And as long as I gave them the opportunity for it, I felt like that was more than enough. But yeah, kind of like what Max said, you just don't want to run into like oppressive meta decks every single time.
Right.
And like some people played the meta decks in casual, but they were learning it, and they kind of didn't have like a whole grasp of kind of the decks and stuff like that, which is fine. It doesn't bother me if they're playing them or at all. But I think the only deck that I played that could be arguably oppressive in the meta was probably the first week I played against Rainy, was the Fire Lightning list, which was like, I guess because I specifically took that from Emmanuel from the Xanarkin Open, and then kind of just added some cards into it and changed it up a little bit. But beyond that, I think like I just played a bunch of weird stuff like Onion Knights and some other weird fire like Lon I played one week and stuff. So like
that was fun. I kind of missed that from the Top Cut, and in Division 1 obviously they had 2 decks, so I did kind of miss a little bit that getting to see the different decks people would try, whereas obviously in the Top Cut you were just stuck with one the whole time. So
I really like as we're just talking about like splitting hairs, but like the overall experience of this league was awesome. Like everybody that I played that that I talked to while like playing like in voice chat, like I always like sat after and like talked with them for like 30 minutes to an hour of just like us just talking about the game,
Yeah.
Yeah.
talking about like where it's going, and like like it was just a fun experience. Like like there were games in my pods that were just like crazy because we weren't like, I mean, it was just a match, and we were just going back and forth, and
Yeah.
like it's, and I think that's like, I mean, I'm gonna sign up for Division 1 because I feel like I shouldn't be playing in casual if the whole premise of casual is like new players or beginners. Like I don't feel like I, who's been playing since like Opus 3, should be in casual.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
next season we're gonna have to change it to the gang plays competitive,
Yeah, probably.
or some of the gang
Yeah.
plays competitive? Some
So,
play
yeah,
casual?
some of the
Sounds-
gang plays League of Light.
Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah.
that's funny. Yeah, no, I'd considered joining in myself, but at the same time, I had a really good time this season. Not only doing these, kind of reviews or whatever with you guys, but also just casting the games, and it was fun too because since I'm technically a judge for League of Light, to cast a lot of these casual games, and sometimes all people would have questions ahead of how does this card interact, and so it was really fun to be able, I can tell you how it goes, and I was already sitting there watching the game anyway, so yeah, it was a really good time.
I was kind of envious of you at times.
Were you really?
Like, yeah,
just
'cause I
because
was
there's
like-
no pressure, or
Yeah, because there's no pressure.
Yeah.
You're just enjoying yourself while I'm just like tearing my hair
I
out.
know.
Like, how do I get around Amaterasu? Like, that, it doesn't matter which week. It was all the same.
It was always that summon. So speaking of that, little segue here. We'll do a little card dive because I'm sure you two have different opinions. So I know how much Max, basically, he feels like that card just ruined him and wrecked his whole deck. And I'm assuming you would defend that card, Riley. How do you feel about it? Because I must admit, so let me give here. I'll set the stage for it. I always knew it would be strong, and I have to say, the fact that it kills a forward, like does 8,000 damage, does feel awfully oppressive at times, and it makes cards like, for example, I know Max never ended up even using his lightning because what's the point? I'm going to pay 6 CP to not only have it die, and then its effect doesn't even go off. So the fact to me that it not only completely stops the effect, but if it's a forward, does 8,000. Like if it was less, maybe 6,000, 7,000, somewhere in that range. But like the fact that it just totally cancels those canes, those lightnings, the thank rate, all those big ass. I was like, whoa, man,
it's
that
almost
card's
like
brutal.
My only advice for Max would have been to play Lulu, so none of that would have died.
Yep.
Well,
then at least you keep the body.
Yeah, you keep the body.
But at the same time, if they had Terra on the field, it dies anyway.
Yeah,
True.
which is fine, but you can play around the Terra. You can kill the Terra off before you play something.
Yeah.
And it's easier to play around killing the Terra than it is to like just play out the 6 CP lightning and then have it get nuked by Amaterasu.
Yeah.
That's difficult to play around. You have to bait them out with different things, and if they're just going to let you play stuff, that's fine. But just overall in general with the game with Amaterasu, I think that it's a good card to have. Do I think it's fairly costed? Yeah, probably. I don't think there's anything wrong with the card, and like you say, Travis, I think I'll defend pretty much just about any card, as much as I don't want to at times.
I knew you would.
I think Amaterasu is needed in a game where everything that's playing is so fast. It has auto abilities and field abilities and stuff like that. I think it's really necessary to have a card like Amaterasu. It does punish a lot of things. So like March Ritz, like if Amaterasu wasn't a thing, that would still be running around unabated. They would be jamming it in every single deck. So like I think it's needed more than anything. Now, like I said, maybe we should put in some counters or some sort of thing that's going to allow Lightning to get around it. Does that mean playing giving Lightning cheaper forwards with stronger ETBs so that Amaterasu doesn't feel as bad because they're only paying 2 CP for an effect instead of 6 or 5 or whatever it is? Which might be something that we actually start seeing is we'll have cancel effects and things that will just kill bodies, but those bodies will be cheaper, and it will be cheaper than Amaterasu. So somebody will really have to question whether or not they're going to use it on a 2 CP card instead of like 5 or 6 CPU cards
Yeah.
where they're going to get the kill on it. So, but yeah, I can't even remember. I think I played Amaterasu in mine.
I know you did. I
actually don't
remember seeing
remember.
it.
I'm pretty sure I did.
I would say if you're not, it's kind of like it's at Tyro level where if you're playing Fire, you should be
playing it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that at all.
You did.
Okay. I was like, I remember having it, but I don't remember using it.
Max,
that
do you want to
often.
respond to that? Because I know you said how much you hated it.
I just feel like the problem is that it's like the only thing in the game, and I think that's where it feels bad, is where like I feel like it would be easier to stomach if multiple elements had something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, all right, you have to play Fire in order to play this card, and it's just like, then you're limiting your. It's like, I'm trying to think. Like I think Sid Randall is a better card than it's not a better card than Amaterasu. It's just I think it's a better designed card, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're shutting off ETBs, but it's on a 4 CP forward that's easier to
kill,
get rid of. Yeah.
When he came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh, the body's so small, But I was thinking, I think that was intentional because
it definitely was
because that card on his own can completely shut down certain decks. So I don't think they wanted you to have to be like, "Oh, I've got to find 10,000 damage somehow off a backup to take this guy out." So yeah, so it's always that weird pull for me that like I don't want to homogenize the game and I don't want every element to be the same. At the same time, I do kind of agree with you. It often feels unfair that like so only Wind and Fire get the ability cancels. Like what about the other 4? They're just out of luck. That does feel kind of bad. And in particular, I do want to mention with your boy Falthanos, I get why it works that way, but it feels really stupid that you can Amaterasu Falthanos and like kill him that way. Like I remember that happened to you in one of your matches was I think they like blazed, targeted the Falthanos, canceled it, and he died. I was just like, I get it, but it's like that feels pretty stupid. I don't think that's what Falthanos was designed for. Like,
that was rough when that happened. It just feels so. The whole thing is it feels like they're pushing the game towards like, and I mean it's been happening for a while. It's just like you play the best cards no matter what elements they are, and you just like and you
jam them all together in the best way possible. Yeah.
And then you're just like, oh, but what about these mono lists? And you're just like, no, we don't care about the. It's not that we don't care. It's just that it's like, in theory, why would I play a mono lightning Odin when I could have just played fire lightning Odin and had cut down all the stuff,
which is what Rainey did, and then she got all the fire benefits instead of just being trapped in lightning.
Instead of just the lightning.
Yeah, I guess it's more just design than anything, and it's.
Well, I think a design point that I think, like, I play a lot of Legends of Runeterra, and I play like MTG Arena and stuff. I haven't played MTG Arena as of late, but kind of like Legends of Runeterra and how their design team is they print an answer first before they print a problem. So like in terms of kind of what's going on here, it's almost like Amaterasu would have been good regardless of what opus it was released.
Sure.
But if Amaterasu was released before March Ritz wouldn't have been as much of an issue as it was. So that's kind of the same design concept. So whereas Square has kind of been, we're going to release this card first, and it just wrecks the meta, goes through, it's unchecked. People, it's like meta shifting, obviously. People are starting to play things that are going to counter March Ritz heavily. They're going to be more break zone hate. There's going to be like Kadages, there's going to be Mist Dragons running around, and it shapes the meta what people play. Amaterasu broke that a little bit. So granted, Marshritz was in fire anyways, but you could splash Amaterasu and other elements, and it lets you branch out a little more because that card didn't wreck the entire matchup. You weren't completely screwed because if you weren't playing any sort of break zone hate like Kadaj or Earth or Mistrak or something like that. So hopefully they start moving into a direction where they're printing answers first rather than they're printing problems. And I'm hoping they start taking that approach. I don't know if they are. Like people are talking about Neo X Death and that stuff and being slammed down turn 1 and that becoming an issue. You never know how Square does things. They might come out with an answer, a clean answer for Neo X Death in the next couple of sets.
Right.
So we'll see what they do. I think there already are some good answers for Neo X Death within like Fenrir and stuff like that, and Alexander. But I mean, it's just an oppressive card to play against, and if it's a casual stomper in the sense that you're not going to take a fun deck into it and you're going to play it out and it's like, oh, well, I'm not playing any of these answers to this Neo X Death. I'm just going to lose straight out. And
yeah.
It's not fun to play in casuals, but expect it in like competitive settings and stuff like that.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to use this as a segue to what might be our last point here, and that is EX Burst.
Okay.
And I was thinking about, because right now they're so strong. And again, I remember that match you had with Alua where she just got killed by an instant Odin because they just hit a good burst. And then in return, you didn't hit any bursts on your side. No. And I was thinking about the cards individually, and I thought of something like Kuseth. I was like, but that card should have a burst on it. Again, I think Odin, he should have a burst on it. So I kind of started thinking more about what you said, Riley, in that answers. And I think maybe one of the issues is that there's 2 cards in the game that stop EX bursts?
Yeah.
Shadow Lord and some X Death from Opus 1, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I was really thinking, I was like, maybe the problem isn't the burst itself, it's just that we basically have almost no tools to deal with them. So it is this just, if they just get lucky and get 4 in a row, there's just nothing you can do about it. Whereas if we had more Shadow Lords, more things that said, nope, I'm going to turn those off entirely, maybe it wouldn't feel so... I don't know, oppressive, annoying, bad. Yeah, just outright bad. As a matter of fact, Brad couldn't be here with us today, but he told us to tell everyone out there that his only regret was EX Burst.
EX Burst, yeah. Brad and EX
Any
Burst.
thoughts on either of that?
I think that's fair. Wool also shuts off EX Burst to a degree.
Just can't be targeted.
Ones.
So yeah.
But no, I would agree with that. I think you could do. Trying to think, maybe like an action ability that's like pay X amount and then it's like shuts off their EX burst. I don't know how oppressive that would be on a backup. I think that would be pretty oppressive on a backup now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Depends how much it costs. If it was very costly to do it, then
you can do it on a monster. And like, what if, like, I always thought that if you were gonna put stuff like that, like shutting off stuff or negating stuff, like monsters would be like the way to do it. And they've always like tried to make it so that monsters like are relevant and more than just like splashing specific monsters that do like the one good monster or the like. It's like, why did people play Luminous Puma? It's like, oh well, I was able to get back the 2 things that I needed. It's like, why do people play the bomb? It's like, so I can ping the Magisa. It's like, instead of just playing the one specific monster, you have monsters that shut off different things. I guess it's like, you could, like, I don't know, like I like Opus 2 Emperor, like for example, like. Where it's like
he stops action and special abilities?
actions and specials.
Yeah, and right now it's not really that useful, but that it was really good at one point in time, and it's just like I think it'll come around again. I do agree though that we do need to be able to do something about EX first, because like whenever you're obviously there is luck in this game, but when you're putting like that much luck, I guess, into like something that could like you could have played your turn perfectly, like outplayed your like anticipated what your opponent was playing, and you did all the measures to get ahead, and you made a perfect play, but then you swing in and they hit they hit a
Yeah.
burst that kills your forward. It's stuff like that, and it's like obviously it's there to make it so that you can come from behind, but at the same time when you're ahead, it feels that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it feels very swingy. This past weekend, we went, Riley and I went to a tournament live at Fairview, and my opponent was playing monks, and I was playing dragoons, and he went all in, loaded up on the monks and everything, and I got a cherry blossom off. I wiped his board, and I ultimately hit him for 5 damage, and I kid you not, 3 of the damage were all 3 Gabranth that let him go out and get either a new monk or Matt, and then the other one was Kusith. And when he hit those last 2, he had no cards in hand, so he had gone all in. I properly punished him for it, and then because the burst reloaded his hand, it just let him win, and it just felt, again, like you, I was just like, what was I like? I did everything correctly, like you just said. I played correctly. I punished his board. And then just these lucky bursts just pulled him back into it. And so it was hard to not feel a little cheated in that game. Just like, I should have won that. I played better on that match. So Riley, you look like you have something you want to say.
Just in general with like the EX burst and canceling them, I think like Max talking about a monster that would cancel an EX burst would be interesting, but like within the game rules, obviously they can always print exceptions to that stuff.
Sure.
But like having like a 1-cost monster like a Cleone or something cool that you could sit on the field and cancel the next EX burst that flips.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting because at a certain point you have to really determine what mechanics are in a game that you want to keep, that you want to make sacred.
Mm-hmm.
So like in a previous lifetime when I played Pokemon pretty heavily competitive, like energy removals and super energy removals were the meta thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like base set Pokemon. That's like a long time ago. But it was so oppressive because if you just spammed energy removals and super energy removals, your opponent essentially could do nothing because you needed energies to play the game.
And I think that I don't know if it changed, but back then I know you could only attach like 1 energy per turn, right?
Yeah. And you have, and it's still the same rule. You just have supporters, trainers, and item cards and stuff now that essentially just get around that and let you play multiple energies a turn. But yeah, before there was nothing like that. You had to have certain Pokemon that would let you move energies and stuff. There was like Blastoise, I think you could attach and move water cards or whatever it was like that. It was like a sacred mechanic they really didn't want to mess with. And so ultimately they just moved those cards out of the game. I think ultimately if they're deciding like EX Burst or Sacred, they're never going to print anything that's going to cancel them outright constantly, like on a backup or something like that. But
what if they had something along the lines of like a forward or a monster that is a forward say that EX Burst must choose this card if applicable or something like that.
I mean that card exists already. It's Charlotte.
Yeah,
so,
Charlotte and Cecil.
So there's tons of lightning rods that have that. It would be interesting.
I would say to add to that, Wool shuts that off, right? Because he shuts off choosing ones.
Right.
But lately, at least since I've been playing, it seems like we've gotten a lot more searchers and recursion ones. Stuff that even if Wool did his effect, it wouldn't matter because he doesn't shut off the searchers.
And again, that's what I don't mind heavy removal cards having EX Burst because I think that is a mechanic that swings the game back if you're falling behind. If you're taking damage, removing that threat is going to get you in. Hitting a Tyro into EX Burst and searching your win condition is a little more brutal than searching a forward that's going to wipe the opponent's board is a little more brutal than having one of their forwards blown up. So I think, in my personal opinion, I think I would much rather see EX Burst on summons and backups or whatever it is that are going to remove forwards, rather than summons or backups or anything like that that just generate card advantage. So I don't mind Kusith having an EX Burst. It's very basic. Get a forward backup. Is it character? I think it's just forward or backup. And it's a 2-cost, and it's going to be so it feels nice. And you have to have it in your break zone anyways. Tyro, through the roof, ridiculous, crazy. And to some degree, if you are going to have a strong EX Burst card and it's going to give you some level of card advantage, it should manipulate your deck construction a little bit. Whereas like Tyro and Gabranth, if you're playing that element, you jam that shit and everything, and that's the issue.
That was my other thing too. Yeah, it's not like
yeah.
do I choose to put? It's like no, just jam it in there because it's always going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. It's always going to be good. You're going to have targets for Gabranth. You're always going to have a target for Tyro. Those generically good cards, I wish they would get away from.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't mind like certain searchers having it that are really specific. So like if like Diana or King of Burmecia, like those have EX burst, those are going to hit a 1-cost forward, or they're going to specifically hit a Dragoon, which is nice to have. And you manipulate your deck construction around that. If you're playing King of Burmecia and you want a consistent target with King of Burmecia and you want to play multiples of King of Burmecia, you are going to be playing Dragoons. It's going to manipulate your deck construction. So I want to see more of those EX bursts rather than just the generic get a card, get this
get
card.
whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Like not to throw Dan under the table. He's another guy at our locals that we were playing. When we were playing, he was playing Type 0. He was playing that the Saturday and Sunday that we were playing, and he hit Ace EX Burst. The EX Burst just does the removal ability, which I think is fair. Well, he played it as you're gonna flip the top 7 and draw 2 off the EX Burst too. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. That's never gonna happen. Like if they do that, the card's freaking busted. Everybody who's playing that. But yeah, I think that's fair. Like you having multiple effects on that card, that top effect is just the removal effect on it. Granted, it's tough to do because, well, you have to have Type 0 or Cadet forwards, which is tough to have. So sometimes you'll hit it and it might get you a little bit, which I think is kind of a bummer in itself. So it's not a great EX burst.
Yeah.
Anything that generates card advantage is really tough to, at least in my opinion, to really justify in a lot of the cases.
No, that was very well said. I appreciate that. Max, did you want to add anything to that, or shall we get wrapping up here?
That's pretty good.
Hey, that's pretty good.
I'm trying to think of like what I feel strongly about, and that's just like I just hate it whenever like for example, I wanted to ask Stephen this question because it applies to me too. What decks were you thinking about playing other than Mono Fire? Were you always going to play Mono Fire?
No, I was not.
Because I initially was leaning towards Mannequins, but I was scared out of my mind of facing a Sid Randall deck, and that's
super heavy on the ETBs.
and just immediately just getting like my deck shut down.
Yeah,
and it's like I really liked the way that Mannequins played, and obviously I built the deck and I have it, but I was worried about like one card, I guess. And to be fair, that one card just shuts your deck down. It's the same thing like if you're playing Verstale and you're like, oh, here's a Sid Randall, and you're just like,
yeah, all right, well, I guess I'm done.
Yeah. Basically, I'm gonna sit here and play big guys, and that's all they're gonna do.
Yeah.
So sorry. What were you gonna say, Max?
Oh, just what deck were you thinking about playing?
So I think that week, or the week we had to finalize the list, I was just playing just absolutely everything. And like I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday because we had to finalize our list on Friday by noon or something like that. On Wednesday and Thursday, I started playing a Sid Randall Celestia Sea Soul prison sort of deck thing. Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be really good. And I hadn't played enough, and I didn't refine it yet, and I almost took it. I almost submitted it. It was between that and the Mono Fire list. And I was like, it's Mono Fire. I can't mess that up. I've played that a bajillion times, and I'm going to play some few cards I wouldn't normally play in it.
And when you saw your first Mono Fire matchup, you're like, damn it, I should have taken the prison.
I should have freaking took it. Because in that matchup, if I would have played Sid Randall, Celestia, Seafold, I don't think he had it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I would have had the combo out and then would have won it every single time. I think there was a few matchups that were a little difficult. I think maybe the mono Earth monks and stuff that I played against would have been a difficult matchup, I think. But beyond that, I think I would have been fine on every single other matchup that I played. But the prison deck, I think, was the only one I was considering that seemed pretty fun. I can't really remember any of the other
Fun.
decks I tried. I think fun for me, not anybody else. The other one that I was really trying, I think, was Ice Earth. That was the other list I was trying. I want to make Sephiroth work so bad.
Yeah,
I
saw that.
Seven cost Sephiroth work. I think there was games where I was Sephirothing. I was Shadow Flaring like 5 turns in a row.
Mhm,
It
I
was
remember
just
that.
crazy stuff, and I was still losing them. And I'm like, nah, I'm doing something wrong. All right, this card's terrible. So I was like, I can't play that. That's ultimately how I ended up settling on a fire.
It's funny you said that, Max, because when I built my Archfiends deck that I put on FF decks, when I was testing it, I was testing against a friend from Europe, and he played Sid Randall against me. Well, that deck just dies without its ETBs, and so I was like, look, I hate to tell you what to play, but can you please not play that, because I can't test this out, like, if it doesn't work, period.
That was actually the reason I didn't play my own Golbez deck, is because of Sid Randall. And I was desperately trying to find a card to cut for 2 Alexander, to play Alexander specifically for Sid Randall, and I could not find anything in my list to cut. So it happens.
True enough. All right, boys. Well, I think we're pretty good here. So this has been the Gang Plays Casual Week 8. Hopefully we'll be back for Season 2, but if not, just want to give a big thank you to Stephen Riley, Max Ritter, Brandon Lacob, Bradley Shanlin, and a big shout out to our editor and producer, Stephen Salyer. You make all this work really easy and make us all look really nice. And thank you for the viewer, for watching and supporting us. And hopefully we'll be back for Season 2, but I hope you guys have had a good time. And, as always, you can leave any comments or anything below. And that's going to do it for the boys. So for Travis Pfeiffer and
everybody else,
I'm everybody else.
Everybody else.
And everybody else. We'll see you next time. Take care.